Hi, I'm Terry Murphy, the founder of the Women's Wisdom Network and the senior editor for Realty Times Women in Business, Women in Real Estate in the men's room with Murph. And we've had in the men's room Dr. Tony Alessandra, the founder of Assessments 24/7 and the author of The Platinum Rule. Please watch him because he's not only adorable, but he's charming. But we have the real brains behind the organization with Jennifer Larson. She's the vice president of certification. She's a coach. She's a mentor. She's a professional value analyst, instructional designer for client customization and resource development. She's a mom. She has so much education, we don't have time to go through it here. But I asked Jennifer to join us because, as having been certified as with the DISC and motivators, I know just enough to get in trouble. But I understand the difference in behavioral styles. I understand the difference in the awareness of how motivators impact why we do what we do and what's valuable to us in the moment. But in the moment is the key word here, Jennifer, because we are in the middle of a normal that has never been experienced by so much of the world, where we have a global lockdown due to the pandemic. We are denied the things that we do socially from birth, which is interact with people. We cover the universal sign of friendship and safety with by covering our. We don't touch each other, which is an Italian is make you nuts because you and I are high eyes, even though Larson's not one bit Italian. My point is that it has had a real impact. Tell us what you see with the pandemic and how people are the behavior has changed.
It's such an interesting question, Terry. So we've had many months of this that we've been experiencing so far. And for many of us, we're not sure when the end will be in sight, depending on how the next several months go, the next several years, and then what's the long-term consequence of all of this. Things like homeschooling our children who are not able to go to classrooms together. And as you said, having this separation of our social connection. We are built to be people that are in community, that share our existence, and we are not able to do that in the same way that we have been previously. Even those of us that are more introverted, and I definitely fall on that scale sometimes. I'm an ambivert, meaning sometimes I like to be out there in the world, and other times I prefer to be home in my jammies with nobody talking to me. And for each of us, no matter what our styles and our tendencies are, this is unprecedented. We've never gone through something like this for many of us in our lifetime, where we've had this kind of stressful impact on our environment. One of the things that's happening is we're actually seeing things like our natural styles shift in ways we never have before because we're operating from an instinctual response. So when we experience a large indication of stress or some sort of trauma, and I would say pandemic falls into trauma. For a lot of us, it's very stressful. When we're inundated with that, we go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And our instinct wants to keep us alive when we're being attacked by a tiger. And that's what's happening for many of us right now. We're backed into a corner by a proverbial tiger, trying to figure out how we're going to survive whatever comes tomorrow without any indication of when this will end. So, what we're seeing is from that level of stress, we're operating from our instinctual response, which is our highest natural tendency. What that means is that we are overcompensating for the lack of all of normal by creating stronger emotions, stronger connections to our behavior. Many of us are losing our patience more frequently. Many of us are having emotional experiences that we've never expressed in the way we have before, whether they be high volatility, sadness, frustration, depression. All of those things really exist in real life right now because so much of our life is a big fat question mark with a whole lot of what comes next. So I just want people to know that when there's times of transition like this, when there's times of uncertainty, when there's times of stress, not even to disassociate with it things like the real trauma of loss of life, of fear of getting sick, of family members that we care for that we can't see or touch or hug. All of those different things contribute to this instinctual response, and it's messing with our systems. It's messing with our processes. It's messing with our brains. It's messing with our emotions. It's messing with our styles. So I just want people to know that even despite all the crazy, this is totally normal. because we're being attacked by external forces that are upsetting what we know to be true. The best thing that we can do as a response to that, number one, is to give ourselves some grace for when we do lose it in ways that many of us have.
And I want the women to hear this. Give some forgiveness, ladies. Go ahead.
Yes, lots of that, especially for those of us who are very, very hard on ourselves about what we are or are not doing correctly. And in addition to the gracefulness that we need to extend ourselves, and I would say more than we extend for other people, that gracefulness for self, we also can be intentional with doing things differently. So intentionality in this case, I look at it in two ways. One, taking the space between stimulus and response and identifying what's the best way for me to interact right now. How should I engage with this circumstance? Am I in a position where my emotions are heightened and I need to put that on hold for a second to handle something appropriately? For example, taking that space to intentionally respond in a way that works. And number two, the other side of intentionality is when we screw it up and do what's very human, to acknowledge that. And while we give grace to ourselves, also acknowledge if there are other people that have been affected by that. So whether it's making amends, apologizing, or saying, you know what, I totally messed that up and I'm going to try to do that better tomorrow. Those things are all really valuable in being able to decompress this instinctual response that's coming from operating in attack mode all the time. So I just want people to know that it's not unusual for you to feel out of sorts, especially
Yay.
after this amount of time.
Yeah, and just get more chocolate until we can figure this out.
I will definitely never say no to chocolate.
Say, and you know what, Jennifer, I want to bring up the fact that we're adults, and so we've had a little longer runway than our kids, but this has never been you're not going to find this in Parenting 101 because it hasn't happened.
No.
And so we do have to give ourselves, and I think just going to your kid and saying, look, this is new for both of us.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the best I can, and I want you to know that. I mean, authenticity and transparency never are a bad idea, in my opinion, because it helps people understand the humanness is universal, by the way, if you're alive in your body in this moment. And so this is such a great insight that I especially wanted to punctuate the forgiveness part, the shoulding. Women are notorious about shoulding. I mean, I tell them you've got to stop shoulding on yourself, because if you would, you would have, right? But you do the best you can in the moment. You just gave us in a previous segment of the interview with Theodore Roosevelt quote, do it again so that it's part of this one as well.
I don't want to mess it up. It's right here on my board. Do what you can with what you have where you are. One of the things that has been really difficult for me, just to share a personal experience of this, is having my son home and doing homeschooling. He and I, while he is of my loins, are very different humans. And I have bred him from his birth to be very emotionally intelligent, to be very focused on what's this mean about our world at large, and also to ask really good questions when things are presented to him without just taking them at face value, which I often have kicked myself over and over for, because I have to keep reminding myself I did this on purpose. And one of the things that we've noticed in homeschooling is that he and I have a very different approach to learning, number one, and a very different perspective of expectation in learning. I am a learner by heart. I want to know everything as much as I can, and I want to engage in things that I find interesting. He's not that kid. And so we've had lots of opportunities to do what we want with what we can with what we have in my house during this experience, where I've had to really acknowledge that he is doing the best that he can. And I give him a lot of grace also. He gives me a lot of forgiveness for losing my temper about things like getting his homework done. And he's doing the best he can too, in a place that he's never had to negotiate and doesn't have any experience of how to do what he needs to do with those emotions and those uncertainties. at
And
13 years old, he hasn't learned how to do that yet.
exactly. I was just going to say, and he's about 13. Well,
Yeah.
I know that you hold a Washington State Secondary Education Training Certificate of Bachelor of Arts in English with an emphasis on composition and rhetoric, and Master of Arts in Adult Education and Training, Master of Science in Psychology. I mean, we could go on here. And so I just want everybody to hear that if you are struggling with your child, that it is perfectly normal for the rest of us that don't have all of this richness to fall back on, that it is okay to do the best you can.
Yeah.
And you know what, that's all we've got. And even in a pandemic or whatever type of stress it is, which it'll always be something at some point,
Yeah.
is that we learn. You know, it gives us a vortex. I call it the roadblock of the rabbit hole. You can get in the rabbit hole, get in your jams, you know, watch Hallmark for a day, but then when you get out and look at that roadblock's going to help you look at something differently.
That's right.
And it affords this vortex of an opening you would not have had. And so even though, I mean, it sounds very Pollyanna, but you find, you know, the pony in the pile because there is one,
Yeah.
right? And so I want to thank you for joining us. This has been a brilliant insight into how to handle ourselves and to be somewhat forgiving and to give ourselves grace and others, including the, you know, the family, the renegades, the partners, the husbands, all of those things, because everybody really is dealing with something in a way they've never had to deal with before.
That's
You
right.
are always such a gift and have so much wisdom and insights. Join us again for another segment. If somebody wanted to hire you, consult with you, have you train, how would they reach you?
Easiest way to reach me is through email. So my email address is Jennifer, JENNIFER, at assessments, as in more than one, ASSESSMENTS 247.com. It's the absolute easiest way to get me.
And if somebody was interested in purchasing some of the assessments for their team, and then maybe having you do a workshop after, what's the best way to do that?
You can either reach me again through that same email, or you can email hello at assessments247.com. That's our general email box. You can also visit our website, assessments247.com, and you'll find all of our information there.
Couldn't ask you for a better wrap on this. Thank you so much, Jennifer Larson, for being such a resource to help us communicate and comprehend others on a much, much deeper and richer basis. Thanks so much for joining us. Join us again soon.